First Contact and Crisis. The interstellar research station Helios hung like a silver pendant against the velvet black of space, its rotating rings catching starlight in rhythmic pulses. Inside the station's xenobiology lab, Dr. Maya Patel was completing her usual end-of-shift diagnostics when the emergency protocols activated, bathing the pristine white walls in pulsing red light. Unscheduled arrival at Dock 7, the station's AI announced. Species designation, Syverax. Security level, maximum. Maya's hands froze over her console. The Syverax were legendary among human space stations, not for their technological achievements or diplomatic relations, but for their fearsome reputation as warriors. Standing 3 meters tall with iridescent scales and retractable bone blades along their forearms, they were apex predators who had evolved into a spacefaring civilization while maintaining their hunter instincts. Dr. Patel to Dock 7, Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through her calm, medical emergency protocol. Maya gathered her emergency kit with trembling hands. In 5 years of xenobiology work, she'd never been called to attend to the Syverax. Few humans had ever seen them up close, they preferred isolation, claiming most species were beneath their notice. The walk to Dock 7 felt endless. Security drones flanked her, their weapon systems humming quietly. When the airlock cycled open, Maya's breath caught in her throat. 3 Syverax warriors towered in the chamber, their scales shifting from deep purple to midnight blue in the station's lights. The center figure, bearing elaborate markings that suggested leadership status, held a containment pod in its clawed hands. "I am Kexval, first hunter of the Syverax clutch," the leader's voice resonated with subharmonics that made Maya's bones vibrate. "Our young are dying. Your station's reputation for biological research has reached our worlds." Maya stepped forward, professional training overriding her fear. "I'm Dr. Maya Patel, lead xenobiologist. May I examine the affected young?" Kexval's vertical pupils narrowed, but he carefully lowered the containment pod. Inside, Maya saw 3 Syverax cubs, each about the size of a human child. Their scales, which should have been vibrant with color-changing properties, were dull and static. Their breathing was labored, and their typically fierce eyes were glazed with fever. "How many others are affected?" Maya asked, running her scanner over the pod. 17 clutches across 3 worlds, Kexval replied. "These are the last survivors of the original outbreak. Our methods have failed. Our pride." The warrior paused, mandibles clicking in what Maya recognized as distress. "Our pride matters less than their survival." Maya's scanner beeped, displaying results that made her blood run cold. The cubs were infected with a sophisticated bioengineered pathogen, one that specifically targeted their unique biology. This was no natural disease, someone had created it to attack the Syverax young. "This is a weapon," she said quietly, looking up at Kexval. "Someone designed this to target your species." The temperature in the room seemed to drop as the Syverax warrior's scales shifted to battle black. Kexval's bone blades extended partially, an involuntary reaction to threat. "Then we require more than medical aid. We require justice." Maya held up her hand. "First, we save the cubs. Then we can investigate the origin." She tapped her comm, already calculating what she'd need. "Lab Team Alpha, prepare Containment Suite 1 for immediate quarantine protocols. And someone wake up Dr. Kumar in genetics, we're going to need his expertise." As her team scrambled into action, Maya noticed Kexval studying her with an unreadable expression. "You show no hesitation," the warrior observed. "Even knowing this could be part of a larger conflict." "They're children," Maya replied simply. "Whatever politics are involved, they're innocent. On Earth, we have an ancient oath for healers: first, do no harm. But equally important is the unspoken part: when you can help, you must." For the first time, Kexval's posture shifted from aggressive to contemplative. "Perhaps," the warrior said slowly, "there is something to learn from humans after all." As Maya led them toward the medical bay, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into something much bigger than a medical emergency. The station's lights flickered overhead, casting alternating shadows and light across the Syverax scales, and she wondered if she was witnessing the beginning of either a remarkable alliance or a catastrophic war. The cubs stirred in their containment pod, one of them letting out a weak cry that made Kexval's warriors flinch in distress. Maya squared her shoulders. Whatever was coming, these young lives came first. Everything else, the politics, the investigation, the potential conflict, would have to wait. She had cubs to save, and failure wasn't an option. Trust in the face of fear. The quarantine lab hummed with activity as Maya and her team worked through their 18th straight hour. The 3 Sycorax cubs lay in specialized containment units, their vital signs displayed in hovering holograms above each chamber. Dr. Raj Kumar, the station's leading geneticist, stood at a nearby console, his eyes red from staring at genetic sequences. "The pathogen is unlike anything I've seen," he muttered, zooming in on a particular strand. "It's not just targeted, it's adaptive. Every time their immune system starts to fight back, it changes." Maya wiped sweat from her forehead, acutely aware of Kexval's looming presence behind the observation window. The Sycorax leader hadn't left the viewing area since they'd begun, his scales shifting between shades of anxiety, deep greens and restless blues that Maya was learning to read. "Look at this," Maya pointed to a pattern in the cub's blood work. "The pathogen isn't just attacking their immune system, it's hijacking their color-changing abilities. That's why their scales are static." A warning tone sounded from one of the containment units. The smallest cub's vital signs were dropping, its breathing becoming more labored. Maya rushed to the chamber, already reaching for stabilizing compounds. "Step away from the young one," Kexval's voice boomed through the intercom. "If it is too weak to survive, our way is to let nature take its course." Maya's hands stilled for just a moment. Then she continued preparing the injection. "With all due respect, Kexval, you came to us for help. Either you trust our methods, or you don't." The observation room crackled with tension. Maya could hear the other Sycorax warriors clicking their mandibles in agitation. But she kept working, carefully administering the stabilizing agent while monitoring the cub's reactions. Slowly, the cub's vital signs began to stabilize. Its scales flickered briefly, just a flash of color, but it was enough. Maya allowed herself a small smile. "Remarkable," Dr. Kumar whispered, checking the readings. The stabilizer didn't just help its breathing, it temporarily suppressed the pathogen's ability to block their chromatic response. Maya's mind raced with possibilities. What if that's the key? We've been trying to kill the pathogen directly, but maybe we need to focus on protecting their natural abilities first. She turned to the observation window, where Kexval watched with an intensity that would have terrified her just days ago. "Your species' ability to change colors isn't just for camouflage, is it? It's tied to your immune system somehow." Kexval's scales shifted to a deep purple, a color Maya hadn't seen before. "This is sacred knowledge," the warrior rumbled. "The colors of our ancestors flow through our blood, protecting us, guiding us." "How did you know?" "Because the pathogen specifically targets it," Maya explained, excitement building. "This isn't just a weapon against your young, it's an attack on your species' very essence. But if we can protect their chromatic abilities, we might give their bodies a chance to fight back naturally," Dr. Kumar finished, already turning to his console to modify their approach. The next 12 hours were a blur of careful adjustments and tense monitoring. They developed a treatment that focused on protecting the cub's color-changing abilities first, letting their natural healing processes engage with the pathogen. It was slow work, too slow for the warriors watching, who paced the observation room with predatory agitation. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Maya was checking the smallest cub's vitals when its scales suddenly rippled with color, a bright, healthy gold that spread like sunshine across its small body. The cub chirped, a sound that made every Sycorax warrior press closer to the window. "Their natural defenses are engaging," Maya reported, checking the readings. "The pathogen levels are dropping in all 3 cubs." "Dr. Kumar, are you seeing this?" "Already documenting," he confirmed. "We'll need to monitor them for at least another 48 hours, but Maya, I think you did it." The observation room door slid open, and Maya turned to find Kexval entering the lab. The warrior approached the containment unit, moving with uncharacteristic gentleness. "Among my people," Kexval said softly, "we have a saying, the strongest hunter knows when to seek new paths. We came to you expecting human medicine. Instead, you showed us how to help our young heal themselves." Maya nodded, understanding the deeper meaning. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is trust others to help us find our way back to our own strength. The warrior's scales shifted to that deep purple again, but this time Maya understood, it was the color of profound respect. Kexval placed a clawed hand against the containment unit, and the cub inside chirped again, its scales flashing in response. "The human way is different," Kexval acknowledged. "But perhaps different is what we needed. There will be questions about how this pathogen came to exist, battles to be fought. But first..." The warrior's eyes met Maya's. "First, we have much to learn about strength that does not come from combat." As if in agreement, all three cubs began to chirp, their scales dancing with colors that painted the lab in shifting patterns of hope. Maya smiled, knowing that while they'd won this battle, the larger challenge of bringing two very different species together was just beginning. But watching Kexval with the cubs, seeing the warrior's fierce protectiveness tempered with new understanding, she knew it was possible. Sometimes the fiercest predators could become the strongest allies, especially when they learned that true strength could wear many colors. When nature strikes back. The celebration of the cub's recovery lasted exactly 6 hours before everything went wrong. Maya was reviewing the latest test results when the alarms blared. The cub's vital signs were crashing, their scales fading to an ashen gray that made her heart stop. "The pathogen's mutating," Dr. Kumar shouted from his station. "It's not just adapting anymore, it's accelerating their metabolisms to dangerous levels." Maya rushed to the containment units, her mind racing. The cubs were burning up from the inside, their enhanced immune responses turning against them. Behind her, she heard the observation room door slam open as Kexval burst in, bone blades fully extended in instinctive response to the threat. "What is happening to them?" the warrior demanded, scales flickering between battle black and fear white. "The treatment." Maya's fingers flew across the control panel, it worked too well. "Their enhanced healing response is giving the pathogen more energy to work with. It's like lighting a fire with too much fuel." The smallest cub convulsed, its scales flashing erratically. The other two weren't far behind, their life signs becoming increasingly unstable. Maya had seen this pattern before, in human children with hyperactive immune responses. Sometimes the strongest defense could become the deadliest enemy. "We need to slow everything down," she announced, already moving to the medical storage unit. "Not just the pathogen, their entire metabolic process." Kexval's mandibles clicked in alarm. "You want to force them into dormancy? That is only for the deepest winter. It could kill them." "They're dying already," Maya countered, pulling out the compounds she needed. "Sometimes to save a life, you have to take it to the edge first." She met Kexval's gaze, seeing the war between instinct and reason playing out in those alien eyes. The warrior species survived by fighting, by pushing harder when challenged. The idea of deliberately weakening the cubs went against everything they believed. "Trust me," Maya said softly. "One more time." A heartbeat passed. Then Kexval stepped back, scales settling into a color Maya had never seen before, the deep blue-green of desperate hope. The next few hours were a carefully choreographed dance between life and death. Maya and her team administered the metabolic suppressants while Dr. Kumar monitored the pathogen's activity. The cubs' temperatures dropped, their breathing slowed to nearly imperceptible levels, and their scales became completely dormant. Like putting out a fire by removing all the oxygen, Dr. Kumar observed, watching the pathogen's activity levels plummet. But they weren't done. As the cubs lay in their suspended state, Maya began the delicate process of recalibrating their immune responses. Too much suppression would leave them vulnerable, too little would restart the deadly cycle. In nature, she explained to Kexval, who hadn't moved from the observation position, sometimes survival means knowing when to rest, when to let the body heal at its own pace. The warrior's response surprised her. Like the great hunters of our ancient forests, who would sleep through the burning seasons, awakening stronger when the rains returned. Maya nodded, encouraged by the understanding. Exactly. We're giving their bodies time to remember their natural rhythms. Hours stretched into days. The cubs remained in their suspended state while Maya and her team worked in shifts, making microscopic adjustments to their treatment. The station's other research projects were put on hold as all resources were diverted to the crisis. On the fourth day, the smallest cub's scales began to flicker with color again, but this time, the change was subtle, natural. Its vital signs showed a steady, controlled rise in activity. The pathogen levels remained low, unable to gain a foothold in the cub's now balanced system. Look, Maya pointed to the readings. Their bodies are remembering how to self-regulate. The pathogen can't overwhelm them if it can't force them into overdrive. One by one, the cubs began to wake, their scales shifting through gentle colors like aurora lights. When they opened their eyes, their gazes were clear and alert. The smallest one even managed to snap playfully at the scanning drone, showing a hint of their species' natural ferocity. Kexval pressed a clawed hand against the containment field, and all three cubs turned toward the warrior, their scales brightening in recognition. They are truly healing this time, the warrior said, voice thick with emotion. Not just fighting, but healing. Maya smiled, but her relief was tempered by the questions that still haunted her. Who had created the pathogen? Why target the cubs specifically? And most worrying, what if this was just the first wave of a larger attack? As if reading her thoughts, Kexval turned to her. You have saved our young ones twice now, Dr. Maya Patel. But I fear the greater battle is yet to come. What do you mean? The warrior's scales darkened. Our investigators have found traces of the pathogen's origin. It leads to a place your people know well, a human research facility on the outer rim. Maya felt her blood run cold. That's impossible. No human facility would. Perhaps not willingly, Kexval interrupted. But the evidence suggests someone has been using your research for their own ends. And now we must decide, do we seek vengeance in our way, or justice in yours? Maya looked at the cubs, now sleeping peacefully, their scales showing healthy patterns of dream colors. They had come so far, learned so much about working together. Would it all be undone by whoever was behind this attack? Neither, she said finally. We find the truth. Together. Because that's the only way to ensure this never happens again. Kexval's scales shifted to that deep purple of respect, but now there was something else mixed in, the gold of determination. Then we have much work ahead of us, Dr. Maya Patel. And very little time. Outside the station's windows, the stars continued their eternal dance, unaware that in a small medical lab, two species had just formed an alliance that would change the course of their civilizations, all because they chose to save three small cubs together. The price of compassion. The Helios station is now under Level 1 security protocols. All non-essential personnel are ordered to evacuate immediately. Maya barely registered the AI's announcement as she stared at the data scrolling across her screen. Behind her, Kexval's warriors had taken defensive positions around the medical bay, their scales rippling with combat patterns. The evidence was undeniable. The pathogen that had nearly killed the Civarex cubs had originated from the Horizon Research Institute, humanity's premier genetic research facility. But what made Maya's hands shake was the signature in the code. She recognized the work of her former mentor, Dr. Victor Nash. This facility, Kexval growled, studying the holographic map of the Horizon Institute, it houses more of these weapons. It's not supposed to house any weapons, Maya replied, still processing the betrayal. The Horizon Institute is dedicated to medical research, finding cures for genetic diseases. Dr. Nash, he was pioneering treatments for childhood illnesses when I studied under him. The station shuddered as another ship docked. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm, Dr. Patel, we have representatives from the Interstellar Security Council demanding access to the medical bay. They're claiming the Civirex presence constitutes a violation of neutral zone treaties. Maya met Kexval's gaze. They both knew what this meant, someone was trying to shut down their investigation before they could expose the truth. Your council fears what we might find, Kexval observed, scales darkening. Perhaps they already know. Or someone on the council is involved, Maya added, her mind racing. The Cubs were stable now, but they couldn't be moved yet, their recovery was still too fragile. We need more time. A heavy clawed hand rested on her shoulder. Time is a luxury we no longer have, Dr. Maya Patel. My warriors can hold this position, but eventually, they will breach the medical bay. And when they do, they will find either evidence of human treachery against us, or evidence that someone is manipulating both our species, Maya finished. She straightened her back, decision made. I need access to the station's quantum comm array. If Dr. Nash is behind this, I might know how to prove it. The next hour was a blur of activity. While Kexval's warriors fortified the medical bay, Maya worked furiously at her console, diving deep into encrypted research databases. Dr. Kumar helped, his expertise in genetics proving invaluable as they traced the pathogen's development history. Look at this, he pointed to a series of funding transfers. The Horizon Institute started receiving anonymous donations 3 years ago, right when Dr. Nash's department shifted focus to adaptive immune response research. Maya nodded grimly. He was always brilliant, but his methods, he believed that sometimes you had to push boundaries to achieve breakthroughs. I just never thought he'd go this far. The station shuddered again, more violently this time. Security teams are attempting to override the medical bay locks, the AI announced. Breach estimated in 20 minutes. Kexval's warriors tensed, bone blades extending. But Maya barely noticed, she'd found something in the data stream that made her blood run cold. This wasn't just about the Civirex, she whispered. The Cubs were a test run. Look at these molecular markers, the pathogen was designed to be adaptable to multiple species. They're planning to weaponize it against anyone who opposes, whatever this is. A warning klaxon blared. 15 minutes to breach, the AI updated. Maya turned to Kexval, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I can prove it was Dr. Nash, expose the whole operation. But I'll need to upload everything we've found to both human and Civirex networks simultaneously. Once it's public, they can't cover it up. The Cubs will be vulnerable during the upload, Kexval noted, scales shifting with concern. I know. And the station's security forces will arrest me for violating about a dozen protocols. Maya managed a small smile. But sometimes the right path isn't the safe one. The warrior's scales flickered with that now familiar purple of respect. Then we protect you both, the Cubs and the truth. Kexval turned to the warriors. Form a circle. Nothing reaches the human healer or our young. Maya's fingers flew across the console as she prepared the data package. Inside their containment units, the Cubs stirred restlessly, their scales reflecting the tension in the room. The smallest one, the first to show signs of recovery, pressed its snout against the transparent barrier, chirping softly. 10 minutes to breach. Dr. Kumar stepped up beside her, his face set with determination. I'll help coordinate the upload. They'll need someone to verify the genetic analysis anyway. 5 minutes to breach. Maya initiated the upload sequence, watching as years of hidden research, secret funding, and carefully concealed experiments began streaming to every major news network and scientific institution in both human and Civirex space. 1 minute to breach. The upload bar seemed to move with agonizing slowness. 85%. 90%. 95%. The medical bay doors exploded inward in a shower of sparks. Security forces poured through the breach, weapons raised, only to freeze at the sight of 7 fully armed Sycorax warriors arranged in a defensive circle around a human doctor and 3 alien cubs. "Upload complete," Maya announced quietly, just as Captain Rodriguez pushed through the security team. The captain took in the scene, the warriors, the cubs, the damning evidence still scrolling across multiple screens. His face hardened as he read some of the documents, then softened as he looked at the cubs. "Dr. Patel," he said finally, "I hope you understand you'll have to answer some very difficult questions." "I know," she replied. "But so will a lot of other people." She glanced at her console, where reports were already coming in about the data's impact. Starting with Dr. Nash and whoever was funding his research. Kexval stepped forward, scales gleaming with authority. "The human healer stands under Sycorax protection. She has twice saved our young and exposed a threat to both our peoples. Any questions she answers to both our governments." The smallest cub chirped again, its scales flashing bright colors of trust and affection. Maya reached out to touch its containment field, knowing that whatever came next, this moment, this choice to stand for truth and life over fear and power, would change everything. The price of compassion was high, but as she looked at the cubs, their scales now healthy and bright with life, she knew it was worth every cost. Legacy of Understanding. 3 months after the crisis at Helios Station, Maya stood before the Joint Species Council, her voice steady as she delivered her final report. The chamber was packed with representatives from both human and Sycorax worlds, an unprecedented gathering that would have seemed impossible just months ago. "The cubs have made a full recovery," she announced, gesturing to the holographic display showing their latest medical scans. "More importantly, the treatment protocol we developed has been successfully implemented on 17 other affected clutches across Sycorax space. There have been no new cases of the pathogen in the past 60 days. In the front row, Kexval's scales rippled with pride and satisfaction. The warrior leader had become a powerful advocate for human-Sycorax cooperation, using the attempted genocide of their young to forge new bonds between their species. "And what of those responsible?" asked Counselor Chen, her face grave. Maya took a deep breath. "Dr. Victor Nash and his core research team have been arrested. The investigation has uncovered links to a shadow organization called the Genetic Purity Front, humans who believe that alien species pose a threat to human genetic diversity. They plan to use the Sycorax cubs as test subjects for a broader campaign of biological warfare." A low growl rumbled through the Sycorax delegation, but Kexval raised a hand for calm. The warriors' authority had only grown since the crisis, as more of their people embraced the idea that strength could come in many forms. "What matters," Kexval declared, "is not the hatred that birthed this weapon, but the compassion that defeated it. One human healer, who chose to see our cubs as lives worth saving rather than enemies to fear, has done more for peace than 1,000 treaties." Maya felt her cheeks warm at the praise, but she pressed on. The real breakthrough wasn't just medical. In working together to save the cubs, we discovered something remarkable about Sycorax biology that their scientists are now exploring further. Their color-changing abilities aren't just for communication or camouflage, they're part of a sophisticated immune system that could revolutionize our understanding of adaptive biology. She gestured to a new set of holograms showing the latest research. "We're already seeing applications for treating human autoimmune disorders. By studying how Sycorax scales regulate their immune responses, we've developed promising treatments for conditions that have plagued humanity for centuries." The smallest of the recovered cubs, now officially named First Bridge, in honor of its role in bringing their species together, appeared on the display. Its scales danced with healthy colors as it played with its clutch mates, showing no signs of its near-death experience. "The cubs didn't just survive," Maya continued. "They've thrived. And in saving them, we may have saved countless others, both human and Sycorax. But more than that, we've proven that our differences don't have to divide us. They can make us stronger. After the session, Maya found herself in one of the council chamber's observation lounges, watching the stars through the massive windows. Kexval joined her, the warrior's massive frame moving with the fluid grace that still amazed her. The council has approved the establishment of a joint species medical research center, the warrior informed her. They wish you to lead it. Maya turned in surprise. Me? But I'm just a station doctor who saw past fear to find truth, Kexval interrupted. Who taught warriors the strength in gentleness, and showed healers the power in patience. The warrior's scales shifted to that deep purple of respect, now mixed with the gold of friendship. Who taught me that the fiercest battles are sometimes won not with weapons, but with wisdom. Your people have taught me just as much, Maya replied. About courage, about standing firm for what's right, about protecting those who need us most. She smiled. The cubs were just the beginning, weren't they? They often are, Kexval agreed. Among my people, we have a saying, the strongest legacy is not what we take in battle, but what we build in peace. A movement caught their attention. Through the window, they could see a transport ship arriving, carrying the first group of human and Sci-Fi scientists who would work together at the new research center. Among them were doctors who had once competed for grants, now united in the pursuit of knowledge that could benefit both their species. Dr. Nash thought he could use our differences to destroy us, Maya mused. Instead, he forced us to see how much stronger we are together. And that, Kexval rumbled, is perhaps the greatest victory of all. As they watched the transport dock, Maya thought about the long journey ahead. There would be more challenges, more prejudices to overcome, more trust to build. But they had proven it was possible. A human doctor and a Sci-Fi warrior, standing together because they chose to save 3 small cubs, it wasn't just a story of survival anymore. It was a blueprint for the future. The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of possibilities and unknown wonders. And somewhere out there, 3 young Sci-Fi cubs played with their clutch mates, their scales dancing with colors of joy and hope, unaware that their survival had changed the course of 2 civilizations. They were living proof that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the courage to protect, to heal, and to trust. And that was a lesson worth any price.